अच्छा क्या ऊपर लिया है आपने रेडी को बताया क्या इवेंट को आपने बाहर आने के लिए क्या वो तो लंच जो भी आप लास्ट एक लिया हम सही पास वाला मुझे है आप वॉकिंग के साथ मेडिटेशन एक गुरुकुल है हां ये बताना पड़ता है यहाँ से जो है नाम को वहाँ चला आगे बाबा नमस्कार डॉक्टर राव कैसे तबीयत
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر لله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأعمال حي على خير الأعمال الله أكبر الله ilaha illallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم كما قال عز شان كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرقا وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وأروة وثقى فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I begin by advising myself and all of you to adopt the taqwa as it's the best of provisions. The verse that I recited, keeping in mind the sad occasion of the shahadat of our 11th Imam, Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salatu wasalam. Today is the 8th of Rabiul Awwal, which marks the date of the shahadat in the year 260 after Hijrah. And of course, last night when we had the majlis and we spoke in details, I wanted to also dedicate today's khutbah speaking about our 11th Imam. I chose this ayat from Surah Al-Imran 139, which says, "Do not weaken or grieve. You shall have the upper hand should you be faithful." One of the very promising ayat of Quran. Whenever you feel down, whenever you're feeling that nothing is going in your way, whenever you feel like that, everyone is and everything is standing against you, even if you are on the right path and if you believe in what you're doing, but still you see that everything else is going against you, this is one of those ayat which gives you that umeed and that hope. It uplifts you once again that don't worry about if things are going against you. If it's against you today, it might turn in your favor tomorrow. But the fact that you keep faith intact and the fact that you believe in him, that's what's important. So the ayat says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Do not weaken nor grieve. Yes, there's nothing wrong in grieving for a little while, but to continuously grieve for that which has happened to you, that you will never be able to stand back up on your feet again. This is something which is constantly going against you. Everyone is plotting against you. Everyone is, conspiring against you. All those thoughts and ideas that come into your mind. And it's not just at a government level or a city level or state level, even at homes, thinking that, so-and-so is plotting against me. They're always thinking against me, in the families, the in-laws and all that stuff. Things are going in your head. He says, no, do not grieve, do not weaken. You shall have the upper hand should you be faithful. Yeah, that's the key. So we'll elaborate as to what does it mean, should you be faithful. Look at the life of our 11th Imam and inshallah the keys to success. There are 3 conditions that are mentioned. Number 1, do not weaken. Do not be discouraged. And, because when you get discouraged, that's one of the keys to failure. And we want to stay as far away from the failure as possible. Some of the people and folks in their observation, they requested me that I address this as well. that especially one of the etiquettes of Jum'ah, Salatul Jum'ah, that we come to, and many of us may not be accustomed to it because we don't often pray Jum'ah, and sometimes we do, sometimes we can, sometimes we don't. One of the things that Jum'ah has is the two sermons. The two sermons before the Salat. These two sermons are part of the Salat, and therefore you must pay attention and listen to them. This actually becomes that obligatory aspect of Jum'ah. A lot of time when Jum'ah is going on, people are praying, Salat is going on. Ladies have mentioned that on the other hall, and even here, people stand up, they start praying. No, refrain from praying while the khutbah is being delivered, khutbah is being given. And then, of course, you'll have more time after Salat, the khutbah is over. You'll be able to pray the 2 rakats with the Imam. And afterwards, you have 10 minutes in between the gap that we have until Salatul Asr. Pray as much, mustahab prayer, wajib prayer that you want to pray, nafilah that you want to do. You can go ahead and do that in that 10 minutes period that we give between Salatul Jum'ah and Salatul Asr. But at the moment when khutbah is being delivered, I can't tell what's going on the other side of the hall. If people are standing up and praying, no, refrain from doing that until the khutbah is over. Khutbah is only about 20 minutes, and it is considered to be the part of Salatul Jum'ah. See, the only occasion when it can replace your Salatul Dhuhr, we are replacing Salatul Dhuhr with Jum'ah, right? Is when you have the 4 rak'at. We don't have the 4 rak'at in Jum'ah. We have 2 rak'at in Jum'ah, and we have the 2 sermons that replace those 2 rak'at. So if those conditions are fulfilled, then of course, Salatul Dhuhr is no longer obligatory according to the edicts of Ayatollah Sistani. So just the reminder that I wanted to give in this reference. So the 3 conditions that are being mentioned in this ayat, I want your undivided attention to that. Number 1, do not weaken or be discouraged, because weakness and discourage leads to failure. It says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ كَمَثَلِ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. So Surah Ankabut talks about the reason the name Ankabut is given is because of this ayat. Because the name Ankabut has appeared in this surah. So that stands out, and therefore the surah is named Ankabut. It says, one of the frailest of the homes belong to spider. Right? Analogy to those, and it says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. Example of those who take others as their superior than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كَمَثَلِ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. Their example is like the spider. اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا. She, builds her house or makes her house, the spider web. وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. And the most frailest of the houses and the homes is that which belongs to the spider. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Only if the people knew. Of course, we know this. How easy it is to break the house of Ankabut. How easy it is to spider's web to be swept away. It cannot even withstand a strong wind, let alone another big force that can easily destroy it. But it is strong enough to ward the enemy away in order to protect the Habib of Allah. If Habib of Allah is hiding inside a cave, it is so strong that it can ward away any sort of terror or difficulty that might be facing. So while the strength of the spider's web is there in protecting the Holy Prophet when he entered into the cave, but it is at the same time one of the frailest of the homes, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the analogy over here. Analogy for those who rely on other than Allah is like the spider's web. Points in this verse is that, number 1, it cannot survive winds. It cannot survive storm, flood, earthquake. Well, many of our homes cannot survive the earthquakes and the floods and other catastrophic events that happen around us, let alone this spider's web. It cannot survive the rain. Even the weakest on the earth can break the house of a spider. Nothing to prevent from hot or cold weather. You're living in the spider's web. The temperature is not controlled over there. There's no, temperature as far as hot and cold. You're going to feel it because it's out in the open. It doesn't have any cover or shade, nor any protection from enemy. None of those things exist in a spider's web. All of these are some of the points that you can derive from it. Then Allah gives the example. Those who rely on someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their example is the same. Of that spider's web, which spider's web cannot protect itself Of course, back in the day, people were worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were bowing in front of these idols that they had made with their own hands. They were doing this idol worshiping. This Buddha parasti was prevalent. It's giving them an example. They're seeking help, asking from other than Allah in the form of these idols that they have built themselves, or these different Buddhas that they had for each day of the year, 365 of them, Hubul, Uzza, Lat, Manat, all of those that they had, they're nothing. They cannot help them. So the parable is compared with mankind, has many delicate points. First, look at the Ankabut itself. Juhud Ankabut, the striving of Ankabut, the spider who uses her skills and natural resources to build this web. You know, the architect in there is very difficult for any one of us to duplicate. It's only without any mechanism, without any machinery, without any precision, it's able to build this beautiful web with all the delicacies of it, nazakat of it, the distance of each, I don't know, square or whatever it's in there, all are in perfect precision. And that is the skill that this little, insect possesses. So that's as far as the hard work is concerned. Spider's web itself, although it's very lofty and wild, but it is nothing but a trickery. The house is not built for it to live in there forever. The house is built for many purposes. One of the purposes, aim, is to be able to capture the enemy or to be able to capture the prey so that it can provide for the food. The spider is not going to go out hunting. It's going to wait for these flies to be stuck in it so that it can go ahead and eat them up. That will be its meal. So aim for those who are like a spider. Now look at the comparison that Allah is giving to mankind, comparing a spider's web with insan and a spider with insan as well. Aim of those who are like a spider, Ankabutiyan, is only to hunt a fly. Usage of this mastery is only to capture an insect. Insan going after these worldly goods is similar in comparison. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this artistry to this Ankabut, which builds this beautiful web only to do what? To catch the prey and eat it. And that's it. Nothing else can it achieve from it. Insan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him this intellect, this mind, ability to think and ponder. Yeah, what is it used for? Just to go after these worldly desires that exist in front of it. From that end, there's no difference between insan and this Ankabut. So there's a riwayat from one of the Masumin, Muhammad ibn Hassan. He says, كتبت إليه أشكو الفقر ثم قلت في نفسي أليس قد قال أبو عبد الله الفقر معنا خير من الغنى. They say, well, what's wrong with going after these worldly things? We go after it so that we can go ahead and increase our wealth. We increase our wealth. We can go ahead and do other things. Yeah, nothing wrong from that aspect. Falling in love is what is being mentioned over here. So this person wrote a letter to Imam, and he wrote it to our 11th Imam, Imam Hassan Askari, alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he complained of faqr, which is poverty. And then, فَقُلْتُ فِي نَفْسِي أَلَيْسَ قَدْ قَالَ, didn't Imam say, الْفَقْرُ مَعَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْغِنَى مَعَ غَيْرِنَا. He says, living in poverty with us, being our follower, being our, lovers, and in our mawaddat and mahabbat, is better. خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْغِنَى مَعَ غَيْرِنَا. It's better than living with riches and affluency with those who are our enemies or are against us. وَالْقَتْلُ مَعَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ مَعَ عَدُوِّنَا. Dying with us, sacrificing your life with us, alongside with us, is better than living a bountiful life with our enemies. So he said this to himself, and he never asked and complained for poverty ever again. So that's number one, do not weaken. Number two, وَلَا تَحْزَنْ. This ayat of Quran, chapter 3, verse 39 says, do not grieve. One of the obstacles in advancement, it doesn't provide any solution to problems. Instead, smiling and remaining in the state of happiness is better than for physical and spiritual uplifting. Prophet also said to his companion while in the cave, La tahzan, inna Allaha ma'ana. Do not be in grief, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Of course, that was one of the critical moments where the spider had built the web, the pigeons had laid the eggs, so show that the scene as if no one has passed through this cave, while the companion of Rasulullah was crying. Quran came down with this ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet, tell your companion, Inna Allaha ma'ana, Allah is with us, do not grieve. Number 3, in kuntum mu'mineen. This is repeated on 90 different occasions in Quran. In kuntum mu'mineen. If you were faithful. How much, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lack of faith in us that we were believers. That just shows you, if this sentence has appeared in Quran 90 times, in kuntum mu'mineen, that just shows you how little faith Allah has in us having faith. Because 90 times repetition of the same ayah. So it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, some advices, some criticize, in some places for condemnation. And most of all, it is to tell us that in kuntum mu'mineen, just to remind ourselves, while Allah is criticizing us some places, while Allah is trying to give us advice at some place, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to condemn us on some occasions, majority of the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to reiterate this belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu billahi wa rasulihi. O those who believe. This is one of the strangest of the things in the ayat of Quran. It's strangest because you and I have not been able to understand, not strange from the perspective how Allah revealed it. You say to someone, oh, the one who is a US citizen, be a US citizen. It doesn't make any sense. That's what Allah is saying over here. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu. Oh, those who believe, believe. Oh, who are the inhabitants of New Jersey? The inhabitants of New Jersey. I'm repeating the same thing. When you say that, what does that mean? Doesn't make any sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the same thing. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh, those who believe, aminu billahi wa rasulihi. Maybe you have forgotten the meaning of what is it to believe. Believers, it happens to us all the time. We believe in something because of, certain things. We started believing in something. Our faith is strong. But then deviations take place due to the wujud of shaitan. We lose track of things. So the reminder is needed. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. You are still believers, but you've been deviated a little bit. You have lost path a little bit. You're, bouncing here and there a little bit. Need you to come back to the right path. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu. Oh, those who believe, believe. That's what it makes us understand the fact that sometimes we may be believers, but we have lost track. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using this as a reminder. This tells us Iman has levels. One of the things that Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu is telling us that someone might be at the lowest level of Iman, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to bring them up as far as their Iman is concerned. So this is one of the lowest levels of Iman. So it's possible لِيَزْدَادُ إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ, that their Iman might increase with this reminder. Or another place addressing the Bedouins, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابِ. The Bedouins said what? آمَنَّا, we believe. Prophet responded to them saying, قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. You have not believed yet. You have just submitted yourself. Say aslamna. There's a difference between aslamna and amanna. There's a difference between becoming a Muslim and becoming a mu'min. This ayat is telling you right here. It says, قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. You have not brought Iman. You have just submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is it then? Submitting to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is there something more to that? Yes, there's more to that. The Iman has not penetrated into your hearts yet. So something else is required in order for that Iman to penetrate. Therefore, a lot of time, especially in the time of our 11th Imam, the Iman of the people was tested. Imam was in the prison. He was under surveillance. It was a drought season. It hadn't rained in a while. Muslims were doing this namaz istisqa. It won't rain. Another, Ahl Kitab would come by. He would make dua and it started raining. And every time this person from Ahl Kitab, Christian or Jewish, would come, make dua, it would rain. But whenever Muslims would make dua, it won't rain. This waqia is there in the books of history. When that happened, people start losing their iman. This was a test of their iman. They said, well, what good is it that we are Muslims? Our du'as are not being accepted. But this Christian or Jew, he comes and makes dua. Allah listens to him. Maybe their religion is better than ours. So they start having these second thoughts about their faith and their iman. See how quickly and how easily can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenge and test your faith. Or in the story of Talut, when it was told that, those who believe in me, they won't drink from this water. What is it? What's the, reference of drinking water from a lake and believing in him? Well, the iman was being tested. Some of them drank, some of them did not drink. The story is again in Quran, the story of Hazrat Musa and Jalut and Talut. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the iman. Our 11th Imam said, next time that person goes and makes dua, summon me, call me. They said, fine. Imam was called when that person was making the dua. Imam approached that man, held his hand, and was able to bring something out between the fingers of this man. You all heard the story. There was this bone that he was holding on to in between his hands when he would make the dua. And it was the bone that belonged to one of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the bone of a Nabi of Allah is raised like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers his mercy and the rain would come down. And that's how this man was able to deceive the people. People did not know this. Imam was able to uncover that, reinstate the iman of those people who were thinking of changing the path and going from Islam to another religion. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And you say, well, we would have never fallen for that. If someone comes today and produces some sort of miracle like this, we would not have fallen for that. Guess what? We have fallen for other things. Simplest of the ideas that Quran presents sometimes become too challenging for us to realize, comprehend, fathom, and then we start questioning. And then we start questioning the faith altogether. If this is the religion, then, then I don't subscribe to this deen, for example. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about inheritance, chapter 4, 176, then the male shall have the like of the portion of the two females. Person well known for his knowledge and virtues came to our 11th Imam, Imam Hassan Askari and asked, regarding this verse, he asked, women are naturally weaker than men. Then why is it that they are given one share in inheritance and the men are given twice as much? And men, despite their strength, are given 2 shares. Justice demands that it should be on the contrary. So he comes and he asks this question to Imam, that why this disparity, why this discrimination? And to the fact that we know, not normally speaking, men are stronger than women as far as their physical aspect is concerned. And even the society that we live in, which promotes this sort of idea, pushing men to the top, and you rarely see the women, for example, in many of the areas where you normally see men are hogging up the place. For example, even in this country, which is one of the most progressive of the countries there is, you haven't had one female leader in the past 250 years of this country's leadership, right? That speaks volumes. So with that said, which we understand and we take from what society is given to us, male-dominating society, this man is asking this question to Imam, that with all the resources that are in possession of men, why their share is twice as much of that the women, when they are weak, when they are more in need, Allah is giving them half, when man is given twice as much. Of course, this became a means for this person to start questioning the faith and move to another religion, which gives more and more rights to women, for example, according to his idea. Of course, back at that time, 1200 years ago, 1100 years ago, even other religions had zero, as far as what the women were given. This society that we live in, it's not too long ago that women did not have any status over here. They weren't even allowed to vote. You can only go back 50 years ago and you'll find these sort of ideas there. After the Renaissance, only 100 years ago, that when they realized that how we were depriving them of the basic rights, they started making up for those things. And this is where the entire discussion about equality and justice and all those things are coming up, which Islam had already given. And it stipulated these ideas from the very beginning, that it is about equality, but may not be necessarily regarding similarity. So when it comes to the shares of men and women, it is equal in their perspective, it may not be similar. So don't let this sort of thing to drive you away. How many people do you find today within our own fields, Muslims, educated people, right away they'll start questioning, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give half the share to women and twice as much to men? Isn't this discrimination? And of course, they won't have any ways to protect and to protect this idea, defend this idea rather, in front of those who are posing questions. Of course, there are many answers that have been given. I have spoken about it, and I'm sure you're all aware of it. But one of the main and the basic answers that is given in this reference is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made men to be the caretakers. It is their wajib to make sure that they provide for their family. It's not wajib for a woman to provide for her family. On the contrary, it is wajib for men to provide for their family. When it is wajib for them to provide, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept double the share for them, primarily for this reason, because of the obligation that lies upon them. And secondly, the wife inherits from the husband as well, and she will inherit from the father as well, which makes up that half a share that she's getting. So all of these things are with perspective that Islam has set the religion, which came 14 centuries ago without any expiry date. It did not come that 100 years later we'll need to change the laws. The laws came which of the permanent nature, which will be there until the day of judgment. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Time. I very briefly wanted to talk about some of the akhlaq in the seerah of our 11th Imam. I had spoken about a couple of these ideas yesterday, so I'll skip those and I'll mention 2 or 3 ideas from the akhlaq in the seerah of our 11th Imam. So we've spoken about benefiting others. We've talked about adab and the manners. We've talked about humbleness. And these were the 3 ideas that we had spoken last night in our speech regarding the akhlaqi seerah of our 11th Imam. Number 4 and 5 that I want to mention today, and inshallah I'll conclude with this, I promise, is friendship. An intellectual person never justifies the misdeeds of his friends. Rather, sometimes mentions them politely to him that this is something which is wrong. You're not going to go ahead and protect your friend just because he's your friend and cover up all the misdeeds. A real friend is someone who shows and points out your mishaps, of course, not in front of others, rather, secretly, so that he does not make you look bad in front of others. Regarding this, 11th Imam said, Man wa'aza akhahu sirran faqad zanahu wa man wa'adahu alaniyatan faqad shanahu. Whoever advised his friend in secret regarding the misdeeds that they have done, indeed have given zinat to his friend, embellished him, given him waqar and dignity and honor. But the one who mentions someone's misdeeds in public in front of others, faqad shanahu, indeed has belittled this individual, and that is an action which is not permissible. He further explains the traits of real friend and says, bi'sal abdu abdun yakunu dha wajhain. The worst of the people are the people who are two-faced. They have 2 faces. Dha lisanain, they have 2 tongues. Yutri akhahu shahidan wa ya'kuluhu ghaiban. In u'tiya hasadahu wa nibtuliya khadalahu. Who speaks highly in your presence and then he backbites in your absence. How many times have you seen people that you're standing with someone and they're praising an individual, and the moment you walk away from this individual, this is where the ghibat begins. Yeah, that person, you were just praising him a moment ago. Yeah, that was just to his face. This is the reality, what I'm saying now. So this is a person who's dha wajhain and dha lisanain. Imam says this is a person you should not be friends with. And then Imam talks about refraining from anger and refraining from lying, and there are other attributes and akhlaqiyat in the life of our 11th Imam, who was the tragic shahadat of Imam, that he was only 28 years old at the time of his martyrdom in the year 260 on the 8th day of Rabiul Awwal. And the tragedy of all was that how he had to protect the Imam of time, the 5-year-old son of his, Imam Mahdi, so that his survival was so important for the Ummah to come. And Imam did a phenomenal job, to the extent that people within the family were unaware of the wujud of such a son. While Imam protected in this way, while nobody found out, that led to another musibah, which was that Imam may not have a son of his own. That's why some said he's called Askari. Askari referred to some of the fruits as that something which is without the seed. You know, angure bi askar. In Farsi, they say that the grapes, if it doesn't have askar, that means it is without seeds. Imam Hassan Askari is referred to Askari because he didn't have any seeds, meaning he didn't have any legacy, meaning he didn't have any children. That was also casting doubt as far as his legacy is concerned. But Imam made sure on those last moments of his life, when he was on ihtidar, in halat ihtidar, he called upon his ghulam to go ahead and summon his 5-year-old son, who was in the state of sajda. When Imam Zamana came out, Imam gave all of the asrar and rumuz of imamat, and that's where the imamat of Imam began. When he stood up, when his uncle was standing to perform Salatul Janaza, a 5-year-old son comes and grabs the abba of this uncle of his. He says, this is not your right, this is my right. Only Imam Hazir can go ahead and perform the Salatul Janaza of the one Imam who has died. From there, Imam established himself, and of course, the ghaibat of Imam took place from there on. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the tawfiq and ability to ponder over the words of our 11th Imam, Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salatu wasalam. Give us the tawfiq to follow the commands and the teachings of Prophet and Ahl Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, and follow the commands and the teachings that we find in the book of Allah, Quran Kareem. Inna asal hadith wa ablagh al-mawidha. Kitab Allah wa billahi min shaitan rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asri. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم سبحان من سبقت رحمته غضبه وبسط اليدين بالرحمة سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا إلا دون وسعها وفعن السيئات ولم يجاز بها سبحان من لا يزداد ولا معصي لبعد إلا كرما وجودا ولا كثر الذنوب إلا عفوا وصفحا نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو لا طوفان لبعد وجوده ولا بعد المذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفي المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين ألا قد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكم وتشريفا للصفيه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المسلمين وقائد الغر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين وبدرة خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان ما هي آثار البدع والطغيان هادم ابنة الشرك والنفاق حاسد الفرور البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام اتصل الليالي والأيام اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمراء المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الألوفات وازدياد الدرجات وازدياد الإقبال وألوف الدرجات اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أحلو ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآل المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكر إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر.
الله
بسم
أكبر.
الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار بجاه محمد وآله الأطهار. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. ربنا افرغ علينا الصبر وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين بجاه محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف إلى محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على
تسبيح جناب فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. استغفر الله الذي لا اله الا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والاكرام واتوب اليه. All of us together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Let us remember the sponsors for today's Jummah program, the families of Dr. Farazi and Munia Farazi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give success in this life, and as well as make dua for their all endeavors, and also recite to the Father for their marhum as well as your own marhum to the Father. Let's also recite this ayat once within them all together 5 times for all those people who are in need of dua, who are suffering, struggling with a difficult time, health-wise, physically, spiritually, financially. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring them out of their difficulties and provide them full recovery, inshallah. Let's recite this ayat 5 times. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أما يجيبون المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. Inshallah, this coming Sunday, there's an East Side of sponsored by Shamsi family for the first birthday anniversary for their mother, Shamsi, as well as their brother, Sayyid Asif Shamsi. Please join in this commemoration on this coming Sunday. The program starts at 4:30 p.m. Inshallah, finish before Salat al-Maghrib, followed by Namaz al-Isha. Sheikh Hussain, inshallah, will be addressing the gathering. So the family requests your presence on this coming Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا وأولاده المعصومين حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر
الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رب ادخلني مدخل صدق وأخرجني مخرج صدق واجعل لي من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. صل على
محمد وآل محمد. اللهم
صل على
محمد وآل محمد. اللهم
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام. وأسأله أن يتوب علي توبة عبد ذليل خاطئ فقير بائس مسكين مستكين مستجير لا يملك لنفسه نفعا ولا ضرا ولا موتا ولا حياة ولا نشورا. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من نفس لا تشبع ومن قلب لا يخشى ومن علم لا ينفع ومن صلاة لا ترفع ومن دعاء لا يسمع. اللهم إني أسألك اليسر بعد العسر والفرج بعد الكرب والرخاء بعد الشدة. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum ya Amir al-Mu'minin. Assalamu alaikum Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Dhabi. Assalamu alaikum ya Mawla ya Hasan Ali al-Khadi al-Muhtadi wa rahmatullahi. Assalamu alaikum ya Wali Allah wa awliya ya Hujjat Allah wa hujjat. Assalamu alaikum ya Sabil Allah wa Sujai ya Khalifa wa Khulafai wa Khalifat. Assalamu alaikum ya Khatam al-Nabiyyin ya Sayyid al-Wasiyyin ya Amir al-Mu'minin ya Sayyid al-Nisal al-Alamin. Assalamu alaikum ya Ahmad al-Hadin. Assalamu alaikum ya Awsiya al-Rashidin ya Ismat al-Muttaqin ya Imam al-Faizin ya Rabbul Mu'minin ya Rabbul Mu'minin. Assalamu alaikum ya Anbiya al-Mutajabin ya Khazin ilm wasiy Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum ya ayyuhal da'i bi hukmillah. Assalamu alaikum ya natiq bi kitabillah. Assalamu alaikum ya hujjat al-hujjat ya hadi al-umam ya wali al-ni'am. Assalamu alaikum ya abad al-ilm ya safinat al-ilm ya abul imam al-muntazir الظاهرة للآخر حجة والثابتة في اليقين معرفة المنتخب عن آية الظالمين والمغيب ينطاولة الفاسقين والمؤيد ربنا بالإسلام جديدا بعد الالتماس والقرآن واستنباط الاندراس. أشهد يا مولاي أنك أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر ودعوت إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وبدلنا مخلصا حتى طاب اليقين. أسأل الله بشأن الذي لكم عنده يتقبل زيارتي لكم يشكر سقي إليكم ويستجيب دعائي بكم ويجعلني من أنصار الحق وأتباعي وشيعي ووالي وحبي. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم يا صاحب العصر والزمان يا خليفة الرحمن يا إمام الإنس والجان يا كعبة الإيمان يا تفسير الفرقان. السلام عليكم يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليكم يا إمام زماننا أجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وذكرك ورحمة الله وبركاته.